All right. Welcome, Matt. So this is our a conversation about alternative assessment with Matt Jones, Cal State Dominguez Hills. So good afternoon or good evening, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us at TPSE. We wanted to go and talk to people about alternative assessments. So let's jump into the first thing that we want to ask you is just to tell us about your context at Cal State Dominguez Hills. So what's your department like?
Yeah, so the department's roughly 10, 11, 12. We've been growing, but around that number of full-time faculty. And then, 1.5 to 2 times that number of lecturer faculty.
Mhm.
So most of the folks have been there a long time. We have added a few newbies in the last couple of years, but yeah, so kind of well established as a group. We kind of gotten to know each other, built a lot of good working relationships. And then the university, so we're serving folks in Southern California. We draw almost exclusively from the LA region.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're situated right in the South Bay, in between Cal State Long Beach and a few other Cal States that are around the LA
Right.
basin.
Right. Cal State LA is just to the east of downtown, and then there's CSUN north of this map.
Yeah, and Fullerton to the east.
Near Fulton to the east. So
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
like 20 million
Pomona's
people here.
somewhere
So
up there.
that's
Yeah,
why you
there's
that's
plenty
why
of
you
room
need-
for all of us. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so
right.
because we draw a local crowd, we're serving a high minority student population, lots of
Mhm.
first gen students, lots of Pell eligible students. The most common place that they come from is Los Angeles Unified, graduates. And then there's lots of other
Right.
littler districts, nestled around. So.
That's right. That's right. So tell us a little bit more about your students. So I believe Cal State Dominguez Hills is one of the most diverse campuses in the United States. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we rank very high on diversity. We're also, I think, number 2 in sort of the value added or the enhancement we provide to students, because so many students come from, backgrounds where they are lower middle class, often. So, and then the first generation,
right.
Large number of Hispanic, the Hispanic Latinx is the largest category group. And then, a mix of others, sort of no other really large group beyond that one.
So that's great. So we have these high impact practices that we're talking about, in this case, assessment, and it's directly impacting these communities.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned you're pulling students from LA Unified, which sounds funny if you just think of it as one school district, but it has something like 700,000 students. So it's a really
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it's
hundreds of thousands of students. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
In that district.
Right. All right. So let's talk about assessment. So what alternative grading practices do you and your colleagues use in your department?
Yeah, so the number one that we use is standards-based or specifications-based grading. So this is where you have a list of objectives for the course. They are relatively small scale objectives. And then at least the way we implement it, typically you need to demonstrate, a fixed number of times, a predetermined number of times, that how to meet that objective. How to do whatever mathematics is represented there. And so, yeah, so we use that across all our college algebra and pre-calculus courses. We use it a lot in Calculus 1. And then we do have some instructors who are doing some other alternative practices in more advanced courses, things involving portfolios and things like that. So I try to be supportive of that, but the one that I'm most familiar with is the specs-based grading that's happening in the intro level courses.
Okay, so that's great. So seems like primarily in that first year experience is where you're putting most of that effort. Okay, so the next question is, how did alternative grading come into use at your department?
Yeah, so I think the first experience that we had with it was, somewhere around, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. Linda Nilsson had this book come out. Robert Talbert had a blog where he was talking about picking up these ideas. And so between those two, you know, I got kind of inspired and interested in exploring this as a way of taking things on. I think specifications-based grading, as I've learned in using it, is especially well suited when you have a lot of like very specific objectives for a course. So I had a colleague, Sharon Lanigan, she and I, you know, built out this course for pre-calculus, and then we've honed it over time. So that was the first place that we used it. We had some grant support to get it going, which was nice.
Right.
Like not in the very first semester, but like in the maybe the year following. That gave us room to sort of really build out a robust course where we could have everything, you know, generate all the resources we needed to run the course, because it involves having, you know, being able to provide students multiple attempts at each objective, having kind of a map of when those things come up in the course, of course, knowing what you want to teach, you know, and when you're going to offer assessments and all those things.
Okay, so what did you use the grant money for? So this sounds like a very front-loaded project that you had to work on.
Yeah, so the grant money bought us some time, and with that time, we built out the assessments that we wanted to use. So we already had by that point, you know, a list of the objectives and maybe kind of at least one version of, you know, quizzes and exams that we wanted to use, but we wanted to build out a more robust system that could generate alternative versions. We often do it by having sort of dynamically generated numbers that can go into problems, and then kind of a bank of a few different sorts of questions that could be used to test any particular objective.
Okay, so you need to really flesh out all the different kinds of questions that you would ask to show mastery or learning of that, or of these specific objectives. So another question that you're making me think about is the work that you did before you got to this point. So you said you were working with Sharon on the course before. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Did you set it up as an inquiry-based or active learning class, and then so that primed things?
Yeah, so it was an active learning sort of a class with the students, you know, being pretty actively engaged, you know, in pairs or small groups on problems day to day. We initially had found a free textbook, but it turned out it wasn't really targeted well to the level that the students were coming in for the course. So that's when we started sort of building out our own, you know, problems to use in class. And then, yeah, I mean, one of the main tasks, and I think just something helpful in general, is to really get clear on what is the stuff that's important in the course, right? And that's what building that list of objectives does. So we kind of had it grouped out into areas. So for the pre-calculus course, right, we do a little bit with linear functions, quadratics, exponentials is certainly a major topic. Trig is a big piece of the course. Some just general things about functions like transformations and composition and things like that, inverse functions. So just kind of building under those, you know, sets of specific items that we want people to demonstrate that they knew. And the way that we did it was we specified, you know, out of this long list, these are the ones we call essential. So you have to demonstrate that you can do all of those things to earn a C in the course. And then getting beyond that is how you move up from a C to a higher grade.
Okay, really good. Really good. It kind of ties together prior work and then sort of continuing that work and adding the alternative assessments or alternative grading. All right. So then the next question is why? Right? Why would you do this and use alternative forms of grading?
Yeah, I feel like one of the issues that was kind of nagging at me with grading in pre-calculus, I mean, there's a couple of things, but one is, you know, you had the sort of the one, I guess, byproduct of partial credit is that, you know, sometimes you have students who go through a whole course and it's not clear that they've really mastered the key things that you want, right? Because what does it mean to get, you know, a bunch of problems mostly sort of right, you know, all semester long, right?
Right.
And so to really put the focus on, no, we really need you to be able to show us that you can absolutely do these things. that's something that's opened up by using this form of assessment.
Right.
And the other thing is, because students are in this class typically coming out of high school, sometimes other places, but they've had a wide variety of experiences with their previous coursework, right? And so some students are ready to just march right through the course and just kind of knock things down, show you, yeah, I know how to do that. Yeah, I can pick that up quickly and so forth. And other ones, maybe there's a steeper, incline for them, right? That's bigger hill for them to climb to get going in the course. And so having this set up means that, if they don't know these things up in the front end of the course, it's okay because they can come back and retest and retake items to show that they have figured it out over the course of the semester. And so you're kind of leveling the playing field that way.
That's great. So yeah, this happens everywhere, coming in at different levels of background. And so you have an assessment system that can address that variance, basically. Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, doing it once is one thing. What about sustainability? What does it take to sustain these efforts?
Yeah, there are, I'd say, a few different things that we have that helps keep it going. So, having built something, I think we used something that has Python maybe built into it. In any case, it integrates tech and some coding so that it can do this dynamic generation of items, so that you can sort of refresh the problems that we're using from semester to semester, so that helps. We have ongoing support to have a coordinator for the pre-calculus course, so that you can sort of keep up with not only generating the new assessments, which is maybe not too big a deal, but also kind of monitoring the success of the course, deciding that maybe this objective wasn't so essential after all, or maybe you want to change emphasis because students seem to get to the next course and they don't remember how to do something else that it turns out is important, those kinds of things. So kind of ongoing monitoring that you would want to do for a course.
Right. So this is a prime example of why you would need a coordinator, because you need someone who's keeping their eye on the whole system consistently. It's not something that you'd want to just come and go and people do whatever. You need someone to be in charge of this. All right. So I'm wondering also, this is more of a basic question, how many faculty in your department are involved in this?
Yeah, so with pre-calculus, I'd say there's maybe roughly half a dozen instructors who've gone through and used this with us. And then calculus adds probably 3 more instructors that are doing it. And then some of those calculus instructors are also doing some form of alternative grading in some higher level courses.
Right. Yeah. All right, good. So that's good. That's a fair number of people involved in this program.
Yeah, and so we have for the pre-calculus part of the coordination is we have some coordination meetings, right? So we haven't, at first we had to introduce everyone to how the system worked, right? So there was some sort of front end work on that, but we have just kind of ongoing check-in meetings with folks to make sure that things are working. Yeah, I think helps support the instructors and lets us sort of, identify new issues that come up as we continue to use the course, because the students change even if the course doesn't,
Yeah, have things changed recently? In the
Yeah,
last few years?
I feel like there was this big cloud over all of us from something.
Okay, yeah, all right. So yes, change is a constant, so you have to keep rolling with these changes. Right, so let's talk about your department. I asked you a question about how many, but what about the other parts of this? So how does your department support alternative grading?
Yeah, so besides the kind of explicit things that support keeping it going in the pre-calculus, we've tried to be, I think, pretty open in the way that we don't, for instance, publish, pass rates. We don't, most of our courses beyond Calc 1, there aren't that many sections, so we don't, make anything public about grade distributions or anything like that would put pressure on people, either to pass more people or to feel like they're, other colleagues are going to single them out for being too nice or something like that.
Okay.
So that stuff is not out in front of everyone. I think that helps. And then also just a lot of, ongoing conversations. As chair, I try to check in with as many people as I can on a pretty regular basis, just to have those conversations about, is this working for you? I know when a couple of my colleagues were trying portfolios in, I think it was our Intro to Proof course, they weren't completely happy with some aspects of how it was going. And I was able to make some suggestions that, I'm not sure how much they end up doing, but at least, having that sort of forum to generate ideas and feel like it's okay to continue to make alterations or to try something out and then decide it's not working exactly the way I wanted and I'm going to do it a little bit differently.
Right.
We've tried to be real supportive in our tenure guidelines and all that, so that people feel like they can do those kinds of things.
So they have room to maneuver, they can try things and adjust them if they have reasons for that. And also sounds like you're using your role as chair as a supporter of these efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. So how did you introduce alternative grading to your colleagues? So back when you got this going?
Yeah, so we had decided to, roll this out as a thing that was not just going to be, the two of us that developed the pre-calculus course, but to have everyone teaching pre-calculus use this. And so, we had meetings, and in some ways this parallels, what you need to do with students, right? If you're introducing a new system, you want to sort of do some front-end explanation, but also provide sort of ongoing check-in to support people in making sense of things as they go, right? So it's the same with instructors. We try to explain up front, like, there's no longer going to be this thing of, giving partial credit and deciding points. Instead, students have multiple, opportunities to demonstrate that they know how to do something, and your job is to decide that something is good enough or that it's not, and that they need to attempt it again on some future assessment, right? And so it's a shift in mindset for them, but I think with that in mind, and then explaining some of the benefits that we were talking about, but also, right, there's no longer the, do I give 7 points to this or 6 points, right? Like some of that is kind of a relief to instructors, I think. So there's a lot of assessment goes on in this, but it can go fairly quickly because you can sort of rapidly see, like, oh yeah, this person did it, or they're close enough that I think, I'm going to count it because it was just an arithmetic error or something, or no, this is really, they significantly, are off the mark, and they don't really understand inequalities or whatever it might be. And
that's right.
I want to see them try again,
Okay. Yeah. So very good.
Yeah. And I would say also that we built a lot of things to support introducing it to both the instructors and the students. So we have an Excel sheet that makes it easy, where you're just basically entering ones and zeros in the way we use it. So for each student, you have under each item either that they were successful or not, so a one or a zero, and then sort of a tally out at the end that lets you know how they're doing overall in terms of, counting up all the times they've met or not met this particular goal.
Didn't you also mention that when we talked previously about students getting a card?
Yeah. So we print off onto a piece of cardstock a list of the goals with blank boxes next to each one. And then we guide them through the semester in using that. We call it the goal tracker. So they're keeping track of their achievement of each of the goals. And so, the first time this happens is they get back, they get it, early on in the class, and we introduce them. On there is a table that shows on each quiz or test what items will be tested, right, in terms of this or that objective. And then when they get that first quiz back, then we show them, like, mark into next to goal 2. If you got this right, you would say quiz 1 in that box, so that they know when they got these things done. And it gives them a way of sort of keeping track of their grades that way, or their progress towards completing the course. And
what to work on next. And it's transparent. They have a goal tracker card that they can keep going. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It helps your students and also gives you a way to frame these discussions with them. All right, good. So kind of going back to the instructor colleague side. So how receptive are your colleagues with
So I think the folks that have firsthand experience doing it have been, for the most part, pretty happy with how it's worked out. So you know, they like that, I mean, especially helps when there's a coordinator or when there's a team of instructors working together, that they kind of have an agreement about what they're assessing. Kind of take some of the pressure off them around building assessments, wondering if they're doing, you know, doing this fairly or meeting what the department's expectations are. So I think those are both big boosts for people, right? So kind of a relief of the mental burden, right, around that. And what else? Well, you know, we have people, you know, sort of outside of the course, looking at it from this, from either the next course perspective or just being colleagues in the department who maybe there's some skepticism. You know, we try to explain, you know, the basic ideas of what the course is doing, but you know, I always try to remind people that there are no miracles, right? I mean, I think we do a lot for making space for students to grow in the course. But we don't, you know, we don't solve all their issues. They don't magically remember everything they've seen in this course now that, you know, just because they had to do it a couple of times correctly. You know, I think they definitely do get better. We have also tried to support our case with data, right? So I think this has been really helpful. And again, this is where it's good to have a coordinator. So we pulled a lot of data on a couple of different things. One was we tracked how students did, like from pre-calculus into calculus, to see, you know, where they were. And so more students were getting through pre-calculus with the alternative grading, and yet they were doing essentially the same in terms of performance. Yeah.
So you increased the number of students getting through pre-calculus.
That's right. So we were pumping in more.
The same, right? But they're doing the same afterwards.
Right.
So there's no harm, so to speak, done to students, but more of them getting through. So that would seem like that's better.
Yeah. So that's helped. And then just the fact that we are tracking data has also let us, you know, continue to alter the course. So if you know, a colleague is like, I really feel like they need more, you know, work on the trig or whatever it is, then we can adjust the course and sort of be responsive in that way also. Right.
That's good. So creating these feedback loops that can help, and someone in calculus saying, oh, students could use more help with this, then that can feed back to the course that you have. And of course, I don't think we can expect only changing the assessment will make these massive differences. You also have to make changes to how the course was taught. Right. And these are all connected, right? It's a system.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Teaching is definitely a system. And so, you know, making alterations to assessment doesn't happen in isolation. So it was, you know, like I said, it was an active learning sort of a course. We, you know, and we provide a lot of opportunities for them to talk to each other. They can also, we've done it in different ways, but they can also sort of make presentations either in office hours or by recording short little videos of themselves showing that they know how to do things. So, you know, engaging them in other ways, right? But I think that the thing that the assessment supports, like, you know, sort of from the backside, is that, you know, we often say that, you know, with the growth mindset, you know, you need to be able to accept that you're not going to get everything on the first try and that you can improve, but having this system lets them actually make those mistakes and then learn from them and get better. Right.
And so then it's aligning, the assessment is also aligning with your values and your philosophy with how the course is taught. And so if you are going to say it's okay to make mistakes, then you also need to provide that in some form in the assessments as well, or at least some of them, right?
Yep.
Very good. So let's talk about administrators. How can you get administrators to support your efforts? So what did you do for that?
Yeah, so I think the main thing I would say to anyone, and that we've done, is to just try to communicate with administrators about what's going on. You know, what you don't want, right, is for some student to be disgruntled either mid-semester or after the semester is over and go running to someone else like, oh, you know, I didn't know I was doing badly, and how come the system is in place and it doesn't work, or they didn't teach me how to you know, be successful, and those kinds of things, right? So getting out in front of it, sharing with you know, whoever if it's a department chair or your dean or whatever, letting them know, like, here's the system that we're using.
Mhm.
that it's meant to give students more opportunities, but it's not a points-based system in the same way.
Right.
We're expecting different things of students. We're asking them to demonstrate that they really know how to do some key things in this course. And that we have ongoing feedback to them all semester long, right? So it shouldn't be a surprise to them if they aren't doing well. And always when they ask us, we can tell them, yeah, it seems like you're on track, you're making good progress, or you've achieved some goals, but really, I think you should be, doubling down to figure some of these things out, because I feel like you're a little behind or whatever. You
Right.
can give kind of, qualitative assessments like that I think help them focus what they want to do.
Right. But then you can't say, oh, right now you're getting a B in the course, because
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
not how things are going. And then with any kind of change, there'll be some students who they're concerned with how it might, because it's different. It takes them out of their comfort zone, and so they may question these things. So it sounds good that you communicate with the people who are your supervisors. So talk to your chair or associate chair or the dean's office, so that everyone's in the know before. So you would do this at the beginning, right? You would suggest doing this at the beginning.
You want to flag this stuff out in the beginning to the extent that you can, and just have kind of a narrative about what's motivating the change, why you think it's going to work, how it's good for students, but how it's also maybe a little disorienting, especially at the front end for students. And if they check out of the course, for instance, right, then that's right. Then they are going to come back confused, because if they disappear for a few weeks early on and they haven't figured out all along that you've been helping people along, they're going to be a little lost. But that's also
that happens.
Yeah.
But then
That's
you have
part of the dynamic of
the tracker. You can say, well, look, there's an empty box right here under whatever continuity.
Right. Like you haven't made progress because you haven't been here to, make progress. Right.
And then move them forward from there. All right. So let's go to I believe this is the last question. What advice do you have for people interested in getting started with alternative grading?
Yeah. So if you, you are certainly welcome to be the sort that dives into the deep end of the pool and makes a sort of wholesale change in a course. But that's not necessarily what I would recommend. I mean, if you have the support to do that, go for it. But, I think there are a lot of things that you can do that are kind of partial steps along the way. So for instance, in my classes that are not the pre-calc class, what I've done is implement different versions of giving students the opportunity to sort of redo in some way what they've done. Either it's a reflection assignment where they talk me through the mistakes they made the first time and what went wrong and how to fix it, or it's a it's an official revision where they can get back some points on a quiz or an exam because they're showing me here I figured out what I did wrong and now I understand it, and I'll be ready for it if it comes up again later. Right. So that's kind of a nice small first step to just sort of giving that opportunity for students to go back and learn things that they didn't figure out the first time. Right. Yeah.
Right. So opportunities to reassess something. Yeah. And you can pick a small place. It could be a quiz. It could be some assignments. It could be, I guess, even a midterm. They could retake or rewrite some things. Yeah.
And then, also I think it's helpful to think about the course objectives in a really clear way. I mean, I think this varies a lot by departments, how much specificity there is in what it means to do this course. Is it just this list of 15 topics for 15 weeks or whatever, or how granular does it get, right? And what really do you need people to know out of those topics? So I think sort of starting to do that can be helpful. Even if you don't completely wholesale, redo the assessment, having a clearer idea of what really are your objective, what's the core of what matters in this course, and making sure that you assess those things in a way that's sort of giving students an opportunity to demonstrate that they really know those things. So like, just to take a completely different example, right? Like I teach the upper division analysis course, and I try to give them multiple opportunities to do proofs involving convergence, right? Because convergence is
of course
the number one thing in that course, right? Yeah. And so even though I'm not doing standards-based grading necessarily in there, I am like providing different chances for them to show me that they really understand how convergence works in different contexts, right?
Right.
And then also, so like I said, we do this specifications-based grading where it's very granular, but you can also have assessments kind of grouped at a larger level where you have just let's say unit tests or something like that, where there's the linear test, the quadratic test, the exponential test or whatever. And instead of having it be very specific, but just you need to get a passing grade on each of these units. And if you don't, you can retake it, and I'll provide some retake opportunities in some systematic way. And that's also, I think, a way that you don't have to rewrite the way that you do your assessments. You just have to plan for maybe a couple of extra opportunities for people to be able to redo something.
That's a good point, that you don't have to do it a specific prescribed way, such as granular specs or standards-based grading. You could chunk things up in a way that might be less startup time to get things going for your first version of this, and not have to spend hundreds of hours developing all the assessments.
Right.
But just pick these nice starting points. Another option that this makes me think of is having a standards-based final. So you do everything as you have been doing, but the final exam, you would make that a standards-based final where you'll say, okay, if you want to pass the class, you have to be able to show me you know how to do these things, get whatever the cutoff score is, like 80 or 90%. And then that guarantees you a passing grade in the course. And then if you want to get a higher grade, then you have to solve these more complex problems. So that's another way to do it, where your faculty workflow is the same. You still are writing a final, you're just writing a different kind of final, but then that forces you to think about what those standards are to pass the class, for example.
Right. And and you could think about that final, depending on how you want to do it, you could have it be sort of mapped to what was on the previous exams or whatever, and have a section that corresponds what was it on exam 1, 2, 3, and sort of even use those subsections to replace, students often want to replace a bad score from something, and you could use that as a basis to do that too.
And then I think you're pointing to this transparency. It's not just, oh, your final will replace the lowest midterm score, but you're actually saying you need to learn these things, and these are the things that will show up on the exam. So that that part's there. Good. All right, Matt. Well, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights and experiences. This has been a project you've been working on, sounds like, for about a decade. So you have a lot of info. So if people want to get a hold of you, I have a slide here with your information. If I can, give me a second.
Yeah, while that's coming up, I hope that people get inspired to try some new things out, and to take the size of step that you feel comfortable with, because I think there's quite a range of things that you could be doing in terms of revamping assessments.
That's right. It's not just the super complex thing or nothing. There's a range of things that you can be doing, and from your experience, you can also do it at whatever course level. It's not really tied to. I mean, we talked about pre-calculus primarily today, but that's not necessarily the only place you can do it. But that's just where you're doing it. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And and I think maybe different forms of alternative grading are better suited to different kinds of courses too. So the more granular seems to me to fit more computational courses. It might also fit like an intro linear algebra or DEs type course where there's a lot of specific things. But maybe in other courses where the goals are maybe a little bit broader, then you might want to do something that's more sort of, unit based or large topic based. Yeah.
Right. Good. So let me just pull that window out. Okay. Yeah. So like one more example, and then we can end it, is the thinking about courses for future elementary school teachers. So then you won't need this super granular system. You would have portfolios or reports or projects where future teachers are thinking about mathematical knowledge for teaching, right? So because of the nature of the learning is about math knowledge for teaching, then the assessments would adjust for that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's not a one method fits all situations, but
Mhm.
that maybe the spirit is to give space for students to demonstrate what they've learned in a meaningful way and give them some second chances, because at least theoretically they don't need to know it all until the end of the course, hopefully.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Right.
building in ways to accommodate that, I think is really helpful.
Okay, fantastic. That's a good place to end it on a positive note. Thanks so much, Matt.
Cool.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Dan.
you sharing your insights with us today.
Yep.